I never talked about it. Like I would allude to it, in interviews. Like this is the first interview I've done sober.
On this week's All Walks podcast, we are delighted to be joined by Mick Finnegan.
I was drinking quite heavily already, and then when the story broke, I wish I never actually kind of talked about it.
Mick tells a very powerful story about a troubled childhood.
Yeah, it's tough. Nobody believed me really.
Being homeless in the streets of Dublin and in London.
Like there was police negotiators, there was helicopters. Transport system was shut down for 4 hours. It's all over the news in England.
However, he rediscovered himself. He's currently training for a marathon.
Your legs are fucked. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like running through bleeding porridge.
This is an incredibly powerful tale and one you do not want to miss.
One of the lads I play rugby with, he often says, like, you're a bit like Marmite, Mick. People either love you or they fucking hate you.
Without any further ado, here's Mick Finnegan.
The All Walks podcast is now in your ear.
Go live! Well, I'm delighted to be here in the lovely Vico rooms with Mick Finnegan. Mick, how you getting on?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Yeah, really well.
I love your story from the outside looking in, and I think it was really important to bring you in and just get to know you, have a chat, see how things are.
Yeah.
So what are you up to at the moment?
At the moment, I am training for the Dublin Marathon, which is a new one on me because I wouldn't be able to run for the bus, let alone run as a 42 point whatever kilometres. So I'm up to 18k at the moment. That's my long run on a Sunday. I run 4 days a week.
Do you 18k already?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Another, I think it's 17 weeks or 16 weeks to the marathon.
What an accomplishment.
It's proper, you have to be, even when you don't want to do it, you have to just get out the road and do it.
And did you ever think that you'd be running a marathon?
No. No. The only time I ran from anywhere was when I was a kid getting chased by the Garda.
I'd say you were quick though.
I wasn't though, I was the one I was getting caught and battered. That's the truth. Usually got a bleeding hiding for the crack
Okay, so this marathon training is it's new to you, but it's one of those life accomplishments, and we're going to talk about your life, but to complete a marathon is going to be a serious feather in your cap.
Yeah, it's discipline, it's getting out there, you're not just running. There's a lot of you're looking at your diet, you're looking at kind of what you're putting into your body, fueling for your runs. I didn't know that was a thing. And then you have to be careful what you put in your body because your body reacts a certain way when you're on the long runs. Yeah. So there's a couple of times where I was caught off guard and I ended up shitting myself, because the gels that all the runners do use end up just run through you So you kind of have to learn the hard way.
Nobody wants the fizzy gravies.
No, God no.
Down the keys.
No.
So 18 kilometres, that's a long old stint. I think we'll start by going right back. What was early life like for you growing up in Dublin?
Yeah, it was tough. Grew up, I was born in the Rotunda Hospital. Parents, weren't even married. We were living in a bedsit in Blessing Street, which is kind of a rough old part of North Inner City, Dublin. Yeah. And then from there we ended up kind of getting a corporate place, Dublin Corporation, for those who aren't familiar with the Dublin lingo. And they got a little flat in St. Michael's Estate in Inchicore when the flats were there.
Yeah.
And then, it was just, the whole area was just gripped with drugs and, people, going through a lot of trauma themselves. And there was the whole heroin epidemic, in that area. And then we moved from Michael's Estate into the North Avenue. And then I would have hung around kind of Crumlin, Dolphins Barn Flats from my mansions because I had all family and cousins. My mum, is the oldest of I think 16 kids or something. Do you know what I mean? And she, did her best to try and kind of give us a good life, but it was hard.
Yeah, good on her, of course.
Do you know what I mean? It was hard because there was, she was working as a cook in James's Hospital. That was her job, and then she ended up, I think, retiring out of the Phoenix Park.
Okay.
She worked up there.
Have you many brothers and sisters?
I'm the oldest of four, and unfortunately, Kieran is the one after me. He passed away from a heroin overdose. 5 years ago.
Pardon you?
Yeah, it's tough, you know. It's tough to kind of lose someone you love, you know. It is. You think if there's anything you can do, and the reality is when you have family members or people that you care about wrapped up in addiction, there isn't a lot you can do, you know, except be there for them when they need that help to kind of put their lives back together.
Yeah, yeah. And was your mum young when she had you?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And your father passed away?
Yeah, Mick. Yeah, he passed away. Yeah, he died during COVID, 57.
Was he sick?
He went in during COVID with a chest infection. Never came out. I remember getting a phone call from the nurse. Lovely woman, like a little kind of like, you know, she was like a senior nurse manager from the Philippines. She's on the phone to me, going, "Hello, Mr. Michael. Your father is in the bed again, smoking. I have told him 100 times he cannot be smoking in the bed. He is hooked up to oxygen. He could blow us all away. And I'm going to have to give him a behaviour management contract to sign, and if he doesn't sign it, we're going to discharge him." And I'm on the phone to my dad going, "Look, will you just sign the contract because they're going to fuck you out? Don't be telling me what to do. I'll tell you if I see you, I'll blame bad to you the next time I see you. Yeah. Tell her I'm not signing on." Sure, that could be me. That could be all my money. I said, "You haven't got any money. They're going to kick you out." And he's like, "Oh, right, I'll sign it. And then the next day, about 6:30 in the morning, phone's buzzing. And I just thought it was an alarm I forgot to kind of switch off. And it was the night manager for the hospital, the bed manager. And I remember her ringing me and going, "Yeah, Mr. Finnegan, we're really sorry to inform you, but your father passed away." I think like 5:30, and we did everything we could to try and save him. And I didn't have a great relationship with my family, you know, and he was kind of making amends the last couple of years before that to try and, in his way, probably apologise for how he treated me and for how he treated us all, you know.
But the fact that he was trying to make amends must have been important.
Massively important to me, yeah. Like, massively important to me, to the point where I was like, you know, giving him the opportunity to, giving him the space and just giving him time. And I'd hang out with him, you know, and he'd be just always moaning. Like, sitting there smoking in the pub when he shouldn't be smoking. "Don't tell me what to do, John. I've been drinking here 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to get barred out of all the pubs, like, you know, you get barred out of Marble Arch for fucking telling the barman to fuck off. Then he'd be barred out of the Black Forge for telling someone there to fuck off. Then he'd be over in the Long Mile Road pub. Then he'd be up and bleeding the bleeding the Four Roads, the Windjammer, fucking you name it, like the Chancery Inn.
Did he have addiction issues?
He drank, yeah, he drank a lot, drank heavily.
And did you feel, even as a young boy, that you had to protect your other siblings, or were they pretty much able to cope on their own?
Like, I wasn't around much because of, you know, what happened to me as a kid.
Yeah.
You know, like with the whole being like basically bringing attention and going to the reporting my abuser. You know, when I was a kid, going into the Garda station.
How old are you when that started happening?
When it started happening, I was around 12, and I got being groomed and sexually abused on a regular basis. And then ultimately it came to a head when, like, the older you get, the more aware you become, and you kind of recognise that what's happening to you is wrong. It shouldn't happen. And you know, you go from experiencing that, and then, you know, the perpetrator escalating into a period of violence, and to the point where you know, you're pinned face down to the bed as a kid, you know, and you're punched repeatedly in the back and you're raped, you know. And then it was after that then that I went to the, you know, I was in my teens when that happened. And then I went to the police and was like, this is what happened. And we got ran from the police station. The police didn't want to know.
Really?
Yeah, initially. And then eventually went the second time round. And there was a guard there. He was a nice enough gentleman. He kind of took the statement and did the investigation, but the DPP came back and refused to prosecute him. And then the kind of, my kind of, because of like the abuse, and the grooming and stuff like that, I had behaviour management issues. I didn't trust anybody, struggled to let anybody in. And I remember just having such a wall up, that I never really truly let anybody in, because I wasn't able to trust anyone.
When you went through that incredibly tough period of your life, did you go to your mum or dad and explain what happened, or did you feel embarrassed?
I was embarrassed, I eventually told them, and then there was a breakdown in the family home. My own behaviour wasn't that great.
Yeah.
I ended up, homeless. Sleeping rough, accessing, under 18 services.
How old were you when you went homeless?
I was probably 16 or 17. I remember Rose Rooney was my first project worker. She worked for, there was a service called the Extension that Focus Ireland ran, and she would look after me. And I remember the first time, I think, was down in St. Patrick's Park, next to St. Patrick's Cathedral there, for the assessment. And she took me in, and, but I was sleeping rough for ages, for a long time. And then, there'd be families in the area that kind of, take you in occasionally, or let you sleep on the sofa. But then I would just disappear. And that's always been a constant, probably, theme in my life, going even right up to now. Before I got sober, I would just disappear on people.
Being a young fella experiencing what you're experiencing, was probably the easiest way for you to cope was to not talk to anybody and hold it all in. It's very hard for a young fella to be able to be open and talk to people about that.
Yeah, it's tough. Nobody believed me, really. Do you know what I mean? When I came forward, no one wanted to know. Nobody believed me, so you just end up, and that was in part because of the DPP's decision not to prosecute the perpetrator.
Yeah.
And that led me down a path where I was just so angry at the world. Didn't trust anyone, and I couldn't let anybody in.
Yeah.
Really struggled with being open and being honest, and trusting people.
Fuck, man.
I think there's 14,500 people homeless in Dublin at the moment, I think, was the latest figures, released. And I think out of that, 4,000 of them are kids. Do you know what I mean? Or actually, I think there might be 4,000 on top of that are kids. And I could be wrong, but it's a
big number.
It's a big number. When it was really cold, you'd end up bringing the free phone number, which is the number that the Dublin City Council set up for people that were accessing services. And you'd be 1-800-724-724. Still remember it. Still remember my national insurance number off by heart. You know what I mean? Because you didn't have the facility to keep identity documents or anything like that. So you'd ring this number and they'd go, right, go up, there's a bed for you in the Santa Maria hostel on Charlemont Street. And you're going into a room with 20 bunk beds. People with various levels of support needs. You got people with poor mental health. You've got chronic IV drug users. You've got people who are entrenched rough sleepers, street drinkers. I remember walking into this for the first time, and there was a reception area in front when you walk in through the big door, and there was a couple of sliced pans on one side, a big tub of butter in the middle of it, and then do you remember the old Crazy Prices ham?
Yeah.
That was that thick.
Loads of it, yeah.
Loads of it, and you could get it for maybe £1, or there was that. and that was your dinner. So everyone would be rushed to get that. This is before all the kind of the great work that say like the Muslim sisters do on O'Connell Street, or the various different charity groups that go around doing
meals.
the soup runs and stuff like
unreal.
that. Like there was none of that back then, you know. And then you got basically moved around to different homeless places, you know, from Santa Maria Hostel. Cedar House was another one. It was also called Cider House, because that's the homeless lads would always just kind of try and, you know, take the piss out of your circumstances. You kind of had to have a bit of gallows humour to kind of try and get yourself through the day. And then you'd go around then to Merchant's Quay. You know, you could go in there for a shower, you get a key worker there. Go into the coffee shop in Temple Bar, Focus Ireland, or down to Brother Luke's, which is the Capuchin Day Centre. Brother Kevin runs it now, but it was called Brother Luke's back in the day. And you go in, you get a hot meal and, you know, place to sit for a couple of hours. And that was literally like the cycle of your day. It was literally going from one centre to the next centre to the next centre.
And did you get any sleep when you were staying in those hostels? I can't imagine that must have been
Not really.
tough.
No, not really. You wouldn't have. You know, you needed always in the back of your head. You know, because they weren't nice places. You know, that's why a lot of people sleep outside in tents. You know, because it's not safe. I didn't feel safe when I was in, and I can't imagine what it's like now. I imagine it's only worse.
Yeah, and
You know?
you'd be a big, strong fella. I'm sure you're well able to cope.
Oh, I've had run-ins, yeah. Like, I've been beaten up badly, yeah. Yeah. Stabbed.
Jesus, Mick. And during that whole time now, you're homeless in Dublin. How long were you homeless for, and what brought you to the UK?
Oh, years. Like, I remember, like, the guy that really supported me through kind of, like, being homeless in Dublin was a man called Howard Russell. I met him in Cedar House, and he was a Salvation Army officer, so I was mad into Jesus. And he's like, "Shine, Jesus, shine," and I'm like, "Fuck off," you know. But he was brilliant. Like, he was so. He still is the most consistent person in my life, even now.
You catch up with him
at least once a week.
Fantastic.
Yeah, you know, even when I fuck up or make mistakes, you know, he's there, like, reminding me that he still cares about me and he still wants to.
Magic.
You know what I mean?
It's important, isn't it?
That for me was really important, particularly in the younger, like, particularly kind of my late teens, early 20s. I'm really struggling, like, with my mental health and what happened to me, you know, and dealing with the trauma of being raped and not really knowing what to do after that. You know, particularly being let down by the state, you know, and never really getting that kind of the restitution in relation to that until, you know, over 20 years later, like, you know.
God.
Salvation Army do all these kind of, if you work for them, you get sent all over the world. And he ended up being brought back to England, and he was like the divisional director for homeless services for the Salvation Army for the UK and Ireland. And I said, like, "Are you going?" He goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Any jobs?" And he goes, "Would you work in one of the centres?" And I said, "Yeah." So I ended up working in Whitechapel, like in the East End of London.
God.
You know, real like, "No, I fucking mate, bruv. I fucking can't." Like, real, like, cockneys. And I loved it.
Had you been out of Dublin before going
No,
to the UK?
no, I've never really been abroad like that, you know, kind of in an environment where it was different, so many different cultures, like, the food was unreal. My mother couldn't really cook, and, you know, most of the food, like most Irish mothers, just boiled, didn't it?
Yeah.
Let's be honest, it's not like watching Saturday Kitchen and you see some bit of pan-fried sea bass and a bit of bleeding buttered mash and chorizo and samphire and all that, none of that.
Did you have addiction issues yourself?
No, not at that time, and I wasn't even drinking at that time either. I think the alcohol came into kind of play probably in my early 20s.
Okay.
What's tough for me now at the moment is, you know, off the back of, you know, I spent 20 years trying to highlight this, you know, and know everyone, like TDs, politicians, you know, police, nobody wanted to know. Nobody. And eventually then we started to kind of get traction when a journalist called Jack Power wrote about it, you know. And then when I told my story about what happened to me in St. John Ambulance, multiple other survivors started to reach out to me via Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. and they started saying that this happened to me, and this was the person that did it, and that was the one common denominator for all of us, was the same man.
Did that give you a sense of community nearly, or a sense that you weren't on your own?
But you know what? It was really hard to deal with, because they kind of came looking to me for having answers, and looking for me to kind of get them that accountability or to support them.
Okay, tough. Jesus.
And I could barely support myself, you know. When the story broke, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago when the story broke, in the Irish Times, it was, you know, incredibly difficult to deal with, you know. And I was drinking quite heavily already, and then when the story broke, I wish I never actually kind of talked about it.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Was it overwhelming for you?
Yeah. You have a level of expectation on people that people will do the right thing. And that didn't happen. It still hasn't happened. You know, you spend 20 years of your life, like, I'm 41 now. You spend half your life campaigning and knocking on the doors looking for that support. You finally nearly get it. And then you're like, well, we have this report now that's being commissioned by the former Special Rapporteur for Child Protection. And he has said that his findings, that there was a significant organisational awareness of child sexual abuse, predatory behaviour and grooming within that organisation.
And do you know if the perpetrator is still alive?
Still alive.
Is he still walking free?
Mm-hmm. He's never been convicted. He's never been... he's in his mid-90s now.
How do you cope with that?
Therapy. Yeah, I used to drink really, really heavily, particularly when the report was published. Like, the anger, you know, after the report was published and there was no accountability, it was a real head fuck. It was a real... It messed with my head, big time. Because you had every fucking politician in the country telling me how great I was, and you had politicians coming down and standing next to you when survivors had led a protest to call for the publication of that report. And then when the report's published and the findings are determined, they all run away and they don't want to hold accountability. They don't want to hold that organisation accountable, you know.
It's hard, man.
There was no consequences for the actions.
Yeah.
You know, when so many people were affected. It wasn't just me. You know, multiple survivors.
And at this stage now, do you think the time is against you, that that perpetrator will pass on without facing consequences?
For me, it's not so much about that, you know what I mean? What I would like to kind of hope that will happen is that I hope the Minister for Children and I hope the Chief Social Worker and stuff like that within the Department of Children continue to hold the organisation accountable, you know, by demanding that Dr. Shannon's recommendations are implemented.
I'd love to give you a big hug, man.
Yeah. I really couldn't cope when that report was published, because I knew what happened, but I didn't believe the extent of the knowledge that everybody had in relation to what happened. And that was tough, because it was like as if the kids in the flats didn't matter, you know. As long as he wasn't grooming and sexually abusing, you know, kids from more affluent areas, that's the main thing.
And that's what still holds inside you.
It was tough to, because there are people within the organisation that knew back then, and they'll say they didn't know, but they did know. There were senior officers of that organisation. They knew the rumours. The report even highlights that fact, and they kept their mouths shut.
Because seeing the Mick across the seats now, somebody who is getting ready to run a marathon, somebody who's lost 60 kgs in body weight, somebody who's studying in a master's. All these things are so incredibly powerful, and I know anybody who's listening to this is going to be supporting you and your journey, and it's just very brave for you to be able to come out and speak at that, because many wouldn't. When I first came across you was watching you on Sky Sports with the School of Hard Knocks, and for those listening who don't understand the show, two ex-Lions and rugby internationals, Will Greenwood and Scott Quinnell, with Sky created this show where they took individuals who are going through tough times in their life together, formed a rugby team, and through the skills you can learn in rugby, the discipline, the teamwork, would make for great TV. How did you even come across that show?
Yeah, like I'm a rugby fanatic now. You know, I love it. But back then, I fucking hated rugby. Like, I just thought rugby was just full of, you know, posh lads, you know, with the collars popped. You know what I mean? And the dudes, and be like, oh my god, sending it. Like, that's
pretty good. It sounds good.
Yeah, like, no, School of Hard Knocks was mad. I was, I had a breakdown in London. Like a real, like, my life was in a mess. You know, and I think when you're constantly trying to put one foot in front of the other and trying to kind of escape, you know, the trauma that I experienced, you know, I ended up just having a mental breakdown because I wasn't talking about how I was feeling, and I was drinking, and I was in a bad way, and I wanted to end my life. And I climbed the bridge in London and got a 4-hour standoff with the Metropolitan Police. Like, there was police negotiators, there was helicopters, you know, transport system was shut down for 4 hours. It was all over the news in England. I was in a very, very bad way. And the negotiator was like, "What do you want?" I was like, "I want to speak to Tony Blair." Like, I was completely just didn't know. Like, I just wanted my life to be over. I couldn't cope with the flashbacks. Genuinely couldn't cope with them, you know, because it was so intense. It was almost like I was reliving that assault over and over and over again, you know. And when I drank, that lessened, you know, that kind of numbed the pain and the suffering and the torture of it all. And I remember being up on the bridge, and the negotiator was like, "Can we get anyone for you?" And I said, Howard Russell from the Salvation Army.
Okay.
And he was in London at the time, and they got him up on the bridge, and we're chatting away, and he turned around, he told me he loved me, and I just fucking broke down crying. And he came over and hugged me, and he walked me off the bridge, and ended up getting jumped on by loads of police. Got the shit kicked out of me. I was detained under the Mental Health Act in England, prosecuted, ended up in a psychiatric unit, and then for a long time I was in and out of psychiatric units.
For how long?
A couple of years. Yeah, it was really bad. Really, really bad. I remember like getting discharged from the psych unit, and they were like, "Right, bye bye." And I couldn't get a job anywhere because of what happened on the bridge. And then I was coming out of the job centre, and I see this camera crew and Will Greenwood and Scott Quinnell stopping people, asking them if they want to participate in the show. And I remember, I think Greenwood, like real, you know, English and posh, was like, "Hey, would you like it?" I was like, "Fuck off." We'll get you a job at the end of it. And I was like, "What?" "We'll get you a job at the end of it." And like, because they were in the middle of like Haringey, just outside the tube station there, you know what I mean? And that's kind of how it started, you know. That's my first kind of real introduction to rugby and being coached, and that kind of was the catalyst to kind of me getting my life together. I'll be so thankful for the sport,
Jesus.
for what it's done for me. Cause it was lost on me at the time. I remember like meeting lads like Graham Henry and going up and giving them a, all right, bro, just a tap, or Steve Hansen and stuff. You know, when they were coaching the Barbarians, and we all got sent down like School of Hard Knocks rugby team. We're all like bleeding mad. Like, you know, there was like gangsters on the team and stuff. And then that was like 16 weeks, I think, filming every day.
And were you living all together?
No. So you went home. You got fed there, which was class, and they paid for your travel. So that was an incentive to go.
Yeah, of course.
Especially if you didn't have I didn't have a pot to piss in. I was like, you know, and I remember like the lead trainer, Chris Chudley, ex-British Army officer, he did not fucking mess around. He was like, fucking run, fat boy, run! And I'm like, I am running. Like, it was just like, he hammered you. He was brilliant. Like that, he created like, you know, a good team. We were the first team to win on that show. Every other team didn't win. We went on and we hammered that team that came in and thought they were going to lash us out of it. And we actually bullied them up front, and I actually scored as well. You know what I mean? So it was pretty cool.
You're playing prop?
Prop, Toyha prop.
Yeah.
Will's dad came up and coached us, Dick Greenwood.
Yeah.
Like former England head coach. He was teaching me how to scrummage.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Sean Edwards came up and did a defensive coach session.
No messing.
No, fuck no. He grabbed one lad by the neck and I was like, oh. We were like, don't open your mouth. Because he was like proper, like, fuck, it was like proper serious.
He's a hard man, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like, I was like, the respect. But the experience was unbelievable. Like, I remember we did a SAQ session. I didn't even know what that meant at the time. Speed, agility, quickness. And all the fat lads, including me, were all there like, oof. We just go and like have our lunch. And he goes, no, you're going to do this with Darren Campbell, the Olympic gold medalist, on this running track. And he's teaching us how to do sprints and get faster and stuff like that. And it was mad. Like the whole best experience.
You know, it was your first time probably seeing an environment that's built on like hard work, disciplined.
Yeah. You
got to be there for other people. People are there for you. It's very tight.
Well, it's the ethos of rugby, isn't it? Like the RFU have a you know, teamwork, discipline, honesty, respect. You know, and I loved it. Like I fell in love with the sport. Yeah. Like to the point where, after the 16 weeks, they do a job fair, and there's all these different companies like Paddy himself. Okay. He came up, handing out free boxers for everyone. Fair play. He offered everyone a job. I remember getting a job at Saracens as a community rugby coach, social inclusion coach they called it, and I was working on the HITS project. And basically HITS was kind of like a copy of School of Hard Knocks, but in Brixton, you know, southeast London, you know, rough areas where we were using rugby as a tool to initiate behaviour change, and work with some of the youths that could end up in gangs, and that's what I did.
But coming from your background and, you know, being a little bit older and gone through the hard knocks experience, and now going into seeing young fellas who are in similar situation to yourself, that must have given you such an emotional connection. Yeah. You must have loved it, being able to help others.
I love helping people. You know, that's the truth. I love it. And, you know, that's why I got the job when I was younger, working with Peter McFerry. That's why I've always kind of tried to remain working, even now, you know, in the health and social care industry. And when I was in London doing that job, it wasn't just about the rugby. You know, you're teaching these young people, you know, how to manage their emotions, how to kind of work together, you know, skills that they will take with them throughout their life, you know.
Of course.
I remember one of the kids actually reached out to me a couple of years ago, Tommy. You know, this kid was in and out of like pupil referral units and young offending institutes and stuff, and he ended up like graduating with a 2-1 in history from university. Amazing. You know what I mean? And loads of kids that have accessed that HITS project over in England have, you know, gone on to kind of do bigger and better things. And it's amazing to see how rugby can actually be a tool for.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And you know,
like certainly for me being a rugby coach, like rugby's obviously, you know, the engine, but the ability just to help people and see people develop and grow and begin to stand their own 2 feet, gain confidence, gain discipline. I don't think there's anything better in the world than seeing that.
No, I loved it. I remember then like getting asked by the Helen Clayton, who was the manager. She used to play for England back in the day. She said like, "Oh, would you be interested in doing your coaching badges?" And I was like, "Yeah." I hadn't a clue. Honestly, didn't have a clue. And I remember going up to Wyndham College in Norfolk, this like real fancy place. Don't talk like that, you know. Oh, don't you know? Do you ski? Oh, you must ski. You know, real like laddie da. And I'm there with all these lads from all these different rugby clubs, really experienced rugby coaches. I hadn't a clue. Straight on the phone to Will Greenwood, texting him going, "Hey, is there any chance you could help me with me assessment plan, please? I'd really appreciate it." And he did. And even he did, and like other coaches as well, because I started kind of. That's when I got like active on social media. I set up like a Twitter account and stuff, and reached out to Bernard Jackman, Birch. He was over in Grenoble as well at the time, and like I remember him, like he didn't even know me from Adam at the time, other than the fact that I was on that TV show, and I just sent him a message going, "Look, is there any chance, like a DM, or any chance you could help me out with some coaching? Could I, you know?" And he said, "Yeah, no worries, send me your email address." And he sent me all this stuff over.
Yeah, he's a great man.
Like unbelievable, like just the generosity of that was just that's always stood with me. I always remember that moment, like when I started coaching. That was just a real kindness, and even yourself when I used to kind of send you messages, and Collie Moran, you know,
another great man. Collie.
Yeah, like because I couldn't like the Brits are great, right? They're great, but they don't have the crack. Like it's a bit too serious sometimes. You know, and I'm you know deep down I'm a messer. You know what I mean? I love a wind up, I love joking, I love taking the piss. Do you know what I mean? And I didn't see myself as a rugby coach, you know, or a rugby player. Because growing up in Dublin, like the only time you saw rugby on the telly was if Ireland won like a Triple Crown or something. And you know, you'd have the lads on the telly and, "Oh my god, the most amazing experience of my entire life." And it was very different to kind of, you know, watching football or whatever. So I never thought I'd end up being a rugby coach or playing rugby. In England, it's not upper class. It's not upper class at all. Do you know what I mean? Like I remember playing with teams in Barking Rugby Club, Blackheath Rugby Club. You'd have bricklayers, accountants, barristers. You know, you'd have lads that had like gentry. You know, like Toby, Signoring. You know what I mean? Gillet. Like, you know, and then you'd have, you know, Frank. You know, from Barking out, like, you know, and you know, wearing his tracksuit.
Bruno.
Yeah, like it's just everyone played rugby in England. I love that about the rugby clubs in England, is that you are genuinely welcomed. Yeah. Whereas I think sometimes here it's wholly dependent on what school you went to.
Yeah, and that
you
needs
know,
to change.
And I think we're missing a trick here, because I think if we ended up going into, you know, Ballymun, Crumlin, Blanche, Drimnagh, you know, Finglas, out by Braider, do you know what I mean? The like, you know, going into working class communities and doing that. I know Leinster has some rugby development officers that do some work in the schools in there, but you need to have a base where you can build something. It'd be great to have. I'd love this. I would love, just because I'm, you know, mischievous, and I'd love to see like a skill from, like, you know, Sing Street or someone like that going into the Junior Cup, you know what I mean, and mixing it up. I'd love that.
I would consider one of your life goals should be to start a rugby club in Dolphins Bar.
My priority and my goals at the moment are finishing my masters in advanced child protection, and maintaining my sobriety. You know, they're my two main goals at the moment.
Brilliant.
You know, and part of that is kind of going to therapy, you know, twice a week. You know, I see a psychologist, Nick, brilliant, and we talk through a lot of the trauma. We do a lot of exposure work, because like even now this is quite uncomfortable for me, sitting with my back to people, you know, because I normally have to have my back to the wall.
Yeah.
And that's just a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
I'm practicing a lot of that at the moment. So if I see a terrace in town or something like that, I'll sit down and have a coffee, you know, with my back to the road instead of my back to the wall. And then I also link in with Nora, and she talks me through my sobriety. So Nick deals with the trauma and the abuse I suffered from as a kid, and Nora helps me maintain and manage my sobriety.
You leave London. You had that experience in London. You coached in London, helping rough communities through the game of rugby. What brought you back to Ireland?
The rugby stuff was just gas, you know, from kind of coaching, you know, even going off and, you know, with the Premiership rugby and working with them. Went to Brazil for a bit with them, part of like the whole kind of Olympics thing, you know.
Fantastic.
There was a job going up in Belfast, and I applied for it.
What role did you have up in Belfast?
Got a job working with the health service in the north, in a mental health unit, using my lived experience to kind of help people engage in mental health services.
The Falls Road experience, what was that like for somebody
Great crack.
coming from the south?
I loved it. If I had a pound every time someone called me a Free State bastard, I would be loaded. Yeah. I swear to God.
Yeah.
It was great crack. I loved it. Like, I loved it. Like, it was like, there was just, I just love the people up that way. They don't care, you know, and they're very, I just love how direct they were. You know, there was no messing, there was no like acting the bollocks, and they were very welcoming to me, and you know, I just really enjoyed my time up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when did you settle back in Dublin then? Do you remember the year?
It was probably 2 or 3 years before COVID started, so probably 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Okay.
Started doing that. Came back here. Still walking away.
Still in social.
Still working with like the homeless and doing talks and stuff, and going around to schools and colleges and universities, kind of just doing. Just basically talking about my life and what I experienced and how, kind of, encouraging people to talk about how they feel. And I, you know, looking back on that, sometimes feel like a bit of a hypocrite, because I wasn't really honest about how I was feeling at times.
Yeah.
I was putting on a front because I wanted people to think that I was okay.
But you weren't.
I was struggling so much, and that's when like my relationship with alcohol changed for the worse.
And when you say alcohol, it was like pints, early houses.
Yeah, early houses, like to the point where you're getting barred out of the early houses. Like, do you know what I mean? Because you're drinking too much, and that's a fucking a wake up call. Because you don't think to yourself you're that bad. Do you know what I mean? I'm not as bad as him. Like, because it breaks me heart thinking about this, because it was only last year when I stopped drinking. But I got to the point, like I was in a relationship with a kind, caring, beautiful person, and she was unbelievably kind to me, and I would disappear to pubs, like, because I couldn't cope with being in that relationship, you know. It made me feel uncomfortable. It made me kind of, because I didn't want her to know how much I was struggling, and I got to the point where, like, I would drink so much I'd end up blacking out. I'd end up in hospital. You know, I'd disappear so much to the point where, you know, and it's, you know, reflecting on that, it's kind of difficult to kind of take on board even now talking about it and getting a bit like emotional. But I also have to take ownership of my own actions.
Look, I'm sure you've heard this from many different sources, but you went through a fucking horrific situation as a young fella. You can't just turn that switch off.
No.
So people cope to try and get out of their head, and there's different ways of doing it. It's pretty normal, I'd say, for people to turn to alcohol, turn to drug use, because they're trying to stop themselves from being trapped in this body where they're thinking about it all the time. It's perfectly normal.
For me, it was the flashbacks that really it was as if I was there, watching it happening to me as a kid. That's the only way I can describe it.
And is therapy helping you
Massively?
deal with that
Yeah, like to the point where I'm like, I never talked about it. Like I would allude to it, in interviews. Like this is the first interview I've done sober. Do you know what I mean? And being able to kind of talk about this, but not having a point. I remember when I did like Tommy Tiernan interview, and I must have had like 6 or 7 points in me before I went on stage. Like seriously.
What happened to you?
But I drank to forget because I wasn't able to maintain any of the relationships I was in. Do you know what I mean? Because of that, it stopped me from maintaining. I'm not just talking about ex-girlfriends or anything like that. I'm on about like friendships, family. I couldn't maintain that. I couldn't cope or manage it, because I couldn't. Because what happened to me was fucking terrible. Like it was horrific, So the drinking and putting myself in an environment where you can be that grey man. You walk into a pub in the north inner city, grab a spot in the corner. You can sit there all day drinking to the hearts. No one's gonna bother you. You're gonna be left alone. €5 points. Like, do you know what I mean? And for me, that helped me survive. So I'll never judge anyone for taking that option either.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because it helped me get through the worst parts of my life. But sobriety is the greatest gift I've ever given myself as well.
Yeah.
I went training last night at Bective Rangers with the lads and walked in, and Mark O'Brien, the bar manager, is looking at me out. He's like, still off the drink? I was like, yeah. He goes, you're looking fantastic. And it was really nice to kind of get that support, and to be acknowledged. And
it's probably great just to clear the head, train, have a focus with other people, and they're there for you.
They're good lads. Like, there's a the lads I play rugby with, there's a mixed bunch of lads. You've got like academics, you've got Brazilians, you've got people like me, you've got fellas down from the country working on the sites, or working as barristers, or working as solicitors and stuff like that. They're just a good bunch of lads. I really enjoy playing with them. It's a great club.
You're a year close to being a year sober, and I'm just so enamored, honestly. Like, it must be really hard for you to go clean, but at the same time, you're now, how far into your studies, into your masters are you?
I've a year nearly done, so I have another year and a bit to do.
What's that in?
I'm doing a master's in advanced child protection at the Centre for Child Protection Studies at the University of Kent in England.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it hard?
It's not easy. It's interesting because like there are times where I'm a little bit triggered by some of the stuff I'm reading, because I can relate to it. It's because the people that you're reading about in these serious case reviews went through.
They resonate.
Yeah, you can feel it. So sometimes I have to take a step back from reading and maybe not go near my reading for a week or two, because it is a bit dark and it is tough. But I think it's important for us to have someone like me with that lived experience in that space, being able to be a voice for people who have experienced horrific crimes against them, in the hope that we can, improve the services that we provide to people, in general,
So, but is the goal to stay within that sector?
Stay within that field, yeah. I want to kind of, I'd like to think kind of navigating the systems here and then learning about the systems in the UK will give me a better understanding of what best practice really is.
When all the dust has settled in years to come and you're sitting back on a couch in front of a fire, how would you like to be remembered?
Jesus. I think I'd like to be remembered as someone who always treated people with kindness and respect.
That alone, if you could do that.
Ideally.
No, you know, like, you can control that, can't you?
I think you can, but like I remember someone saying to me, one of the lads I play rugby with, he often says, like, you're a bit like Marmite, Mick. People either love you or they fucking hate you. And I was like, right, thanks.
But those people are out there.
Yeah, and I appreciate. I love the honesty, like, you know. Like, again, that's another reason why I love, like, the lads down in that club, because they're just unbelievable. Even like last night, I was coming into training. Joe Osborne, puts his hand around me, like he manages the vets for Beck, the rugby club, and he just puts his hand around me and goes, look, I know you're having a tough time, and if you want to grab a coffee or you want to chat, you know, my phone's always on. And I just was like blown away. Oh, completely. He's an absolute gentleman, that man. He means it. And it was just the kindness of that, you know. Yeah, like, and another reason why I love the club, you know, like, there really are good people there.
Yeah, but the thing is, you can't affect other people's opinion, but what you can do is control you being kind and nice as you are to people, and that's all that matters, is you being true to yourself now. Yeah,
I'd like to think my actions speak for themselves, you know. I'd like to think that I'm someone who does the right thing, learns from his mistakes, you know, and someone that will hopefully continue to affect change in a positive way.
You have a considerable Twitter following. 25,000 people who are tuning in to get your daily updates on. And what I love about your social media presence is, you know, people talk about perception being reality, but when you write a post, it's coming from the heart.
The beauty of Twitter, I like it. It's incredibly supportive, and I met some amazing people from there, you know, who have really helped me out when I needed that support. Like, there's a real kind of, you know, don't tell me how good I am.
Yeah.
Or don't be nice. It's like, what's wrong? Like, you automatically just think something's wrong if you're nice to someone. Like, oh, how's it going? You look great. What do you want? There's almost like kind of, what's the agenda here?
What's going on?
Yeah.
But there is the future that is so bright and full of opportunity for you.
I am positive about the future. You know, I'm very, you know, coming up to kind of years being sober nearly, you know, in a couple of weeks, and, you know, I'm excited for that. You know, I'll keep saying it, like, sobriety is the greatest gift I've given myself, you know, because it's me giving me love, it's me giving me compassion, it's me giving me empathy, it's me giving me kindness, do you know what I mean, and understanding, you know, where I don't have to go to the pub and sit in the corner, you know, and drink to forget or to numb how I'm feeling, and to learn how to sit with those emotions, to sit with those feelings, and to experience it. And it's fucking hard. Like, it is hard to kind of, you know, if you're upset or you're angry or you're thinking about something that didn't work out and you're experiencing, like, the rejection or the hurt or a comment that someone said to you, sit with that feeling, experience it. Whereas before, I would just go, fuck, we're going into the Swan, drinking pints, chatting the ear off Ronan, who owns the place. Do you know what I mean, Ronan? Do you know what I mean? Like, and like, it was just a vicious cycle I was in, you know. And now it's kind of one full of love and compassion and kindness. That's me pouring into myself, where I'm invested in myself. You know, by going to therapy is an investment. You know, that's the way I look at it. I'm investing in myself, in my life, in my future, because, you know, how can I give love to someone if I can't give it to myself?
Ah, stop, man.
Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the truth. Like,
dead right. I've been. I'm not going to get emotional here, because to actually witness somebody across having a chat who's just so honest and has given us a true account of what's been a really fucking difficult life, but somebody at the same time who's managed to find a path that is a true path, and you're going to help so many people now down the path. Is the hope to patch things up with the family? Is that a hard thing to go back to?
There's nothing to patch up, really. You know, I love my family, you know, and they know that.
Yeah.
the reality for me is I can't keep going back.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And I think for me as well, kind of being who I am, one of the big things I had to learn through therapy or going to therapy was being boundaried.
Yeah.
You know, I never had boundaries before. Do you know what I mean? And my relationship with so many people has improved for the better, for being more boundaried with them.
Amazing. And is there any goal that you set yourself in the future?
Okay, this might sound mad, right?
I think coming out of your mouth, I think it's going to sound perfectly normal.
It's gonna sound mad. So the plan is, if I do okay in the if I don't fucking die in the Dublin Marathon, because I have a place in that.
Okay, I'm excited.
Yeah, I have a place in that. But if I do okay in the Dublin Marathon, I want to go on and do the Marathon des Sables in Africa. That's the plan.
Is that the one in the desert?
That's the one in the desert for 7 days. You do
Your
in the
skin now, your pale skin.
I know.
still in the
Like,
desert.
listen, the ginger balls will be burnt off me. Like, that's the reality of it.
Did you ever become a serial marathon runner?
Maybe
You want to be careful.
that's a midlife crisis waiting to happen, isn't it?
Mick, I want to thank you so much for coming on and being so transparent and being
Thanks.
so engaging. I think anybody who listens to this are going to support you every step of the way because you're brave, you're compassionate, and most importantly, you're a bloody nice bugger.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
So, good luck with the marathon training.
Thank you.
Good luck with everything, and I look forward to seeing what happens down the line.
Thanks, Greg.
Produced by the Melrose Future Company.